County, October 28th, 2008. Would you please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now turn our attention to the consent agenda. These are items that are expected to be routine and non-controversial. However, every once in a while one is, so if anybody wishes to take an item off the consent agenda, they may do so now. Anybody on the board? Staff? Members of the audience? Do I hear a motion on approval?
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. And this now brings us to a 8-minute recess. At 9:10, we will entertain public comments. So if you have any, be prepared at that moment. Okay, it's that time. We will now have public comments. These are to be expected to be 5 minutes or less per person and 15 minutes per topic. These are also for items that are not on the existing agenda. Would anybody like to step forward and make comments?
Hello, my name's Terry Baker, and I'm last week I was here trying to find out about the nuisance noise ordinance that was coming out. And I think I found out in the paper today that the noise isn't going to be on the nuisance all of a sudden. And we've been waiting very patiently all summer for this, and we were told that to wait for that before we proceeded any further. So I would like to give each of you a copy of the noise ordinance.
I believe that we haven't seen that ordinance yet, even a draft of it, let alone passed it. So
I was told last week when I was at this meeting, Mr. Walensky, I was told to come to the meeting in the afternoon because they were going to be addressing the problem.
Okay.
The first thing I believe it was Robert Selman, the first thing he said is we are not going to be addressing the noise ordinance today because that we don't do. That is sanctioned by the state of California. So I'm just here to let you know did you read today's paper?
No, not yet, actually.
Okay, well, it also states in there that it's not going to have anything to do with that. That's why, and I don't blame them for not putting noise from agriculture into a noise that isn't agriculture because we already have a noise ordinance for agriculture. It's sitting right in front of your hands. It would be like reinventing the wheel. All I'm saying is, why should we wait for something that's never to come when you have everything you needed back on the date when that was dated on, I believe it was May 16th or something of '07? And all we're doing is being so patient. You know, we've been listening to that foul language for about 4 years now, and we're tired of it. I was told that wait till the middle of October. First I was told it would be 6 to 8 weeks for this noise ordinance to go through. Then I was told to wait till the middle of October. Now, I'm told that just don't even wait because it ain't going to happen for the noise. So we're begging you to please use the ordinance we already have. It's been used for many, many years. We're not the first ones who's used it. Animal control tell me they've been using it and been very successful with it for all these years, and now it seems to like it doesn't work. But anyway, besides that, I would like to quickly, before my time is up, address what noise does to you. We have water pollution, air pollution, ground pollution, and we have noise pollution. Now, I don't know what part of pollution is good, But noise pollution, to me, is the most devastating of all of them. It creates sleeplessness, it creates high anxiety, it creates sleep driving. I have to sleep drive home from here today. I hope I don't get in an accident and hurt an innocent person because of these roosters that we have to listen to day in, and we haven't had one day off in 4 years. Now, I know we have a problem out in Copperopolis, and that's a part-time problem. That's like 3 or 4 months out of the year, and they're screaming, well, you know what? We have a day in, day out, 24/7, 365, never ending. It's getting worse every day. Please help us. Please.
Thank you. Are there other members from the public who wish to address the board?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Last week I failed to come up and say anything to during the public comments, and I think I probably disappointed you terribly. Anyway, my name is Darrell Rusk. I live at 101 Melcher Lane, Burson, and my only comment is simple, sweet, and short. Next Tuesday, the elections are over. And I suspect everybody here is saying, woohoo.
Thank you, Darrell.
Good morning, gentlemen. Short story. How much time do I have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? I won't need that much at all. Get a little letter from our friendly building department.
One moment, although I know who you are, I would guess
okay.
a lot of other people don't.
I'm sorry.
Please state for the record your name.
Domenico Nuccio out of Moke Hill. Okay, Domenico Nuccio. I've got that Foothill Trades training thing going. Okay. Anyway, a little letter from the building department saying that I owe them another $94 to fix or to re-up a permit. A year ago, I put a heater on my house, and I assumed, quite falsely, that the contractor actually took care of this. Now I have to come up with another $94, and then after I leave this meeting, I'm going to run home and hope that the inspector shows up sometime today. It would be easily remedied, especially in these times of tough economic times and community development agency. Development sounds kind of like a positive thing. But a $94 charge for an oversight is kind of a whack. A simple postcard. It's when somebody takes out a permit, take a postcard, put it in the shelf, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days later when things are going to expire, send it out to us. We're paying plenty of money for this stuff. A little postcard reminder, I could have taken care of this thing myself months ago and not have to pay the $94. So if we include one little loop in what the building department is doing, a little postcard that they could send as soon as they sign out a permit, put a postcard on a date in a slot, and then that goes out on a certain date, and then us developer people don't get whacked with $94 for very little. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to address the board on an item not on the agenda? In that event, we will move to item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the appeal of Public Works decision to deny applicant an encroachment permit in the county right-of-way.
Mr. Chair, County Council has deemed that I have a conflict since I appealed this decision from planning staff to the Planning Commission. I do have comments I would like to give, but I'll give them as a citizen from the podium. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a moment for Supervisor Tryon to take his seat in the audience, and when he does, we'll bring up our Public Works Director, our interim Public Works Director, to inform us on the issue.
Good morning. Mike Miller, Public Works Director. The Public Works staff denied this application simply because we do not have the authority to accept it. The provision in the code for an application for an encroachment permit says that we cannot accept any application for anything in the right-of-way that includes a post or a column to support for advertising signs. Because we can't accept the application, we automatically had to deny it. We have no authority. It's not the latitude of the Public Works Director or the staff that can make this decision. And under this section of the code, the only appeal is directly to the Board of Supervisors. That's why you see no recommendation from the department either way on this request, because it's up to the applicant to convince you that the criteria for appeal is met. That's on page 2 of your report under the appeal procedure. And on the last page of the report in the attachments is a letter from the applicant's representative, and they have identified the sections of the appeal and responded to it, and they're here, I believe, to respond to your questions.
All right. And will you be available to answer questions as
Absolutely.
the meeting goes on? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a couple of questions at the onset here.
All right.
Good morning.
Proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Miller.
Good morning.
In this particular streetscape configuration, where does the right-of-way extend to?
It's my belief that the right-of-way comes to the front edge of the building at the overhang, and I know Robert Selman from Planning is here, but I know there was some disagreement at one point between it. It was either the face of the building, and from the face of the building out is the public right-of-way, or the edge of the overhang from the upstairs area is at the edge of the right-of-way. But I don't have any more information than that. The sign that's there now extends into the right-of-way, I'm going to guess about 6 or 8 feet.
Okay. Mr. Selman, can you answer that specifically, the question about where the right-of-way line is?
Mr. Chairman, Robert Selman, Planning. My understanding and belief from the Department of Public Works is it is at the face of the building. So it actually, the encroachment of the overhang is actually technically in the right-of-way as well. But it is a zero setback zone. It's my understanding that the property line is at the building line.
But that would be a legal non-conforming
Yeah,
use
we're
for that.
not discussing its merit. That's just what I understand the actual location of the right-of-way is.
Okay. Well, it was important to me to get that stated because that was my understanding as well, that the right-of-way line is virtually at the front door, the brick wall of the building. But I'm familiar with the layout of that area. I won't tell you why, but I used to spend a fair amount of time there. But anyway, coming out of the building, you walk out and you have the overhang, and then beyond there, about 6 feet, as I recall, there's a line of trees that extends northward from that location. There's an existing dead tree or nearly dead tree that the sign is on. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the proposed location of this replacement pole is exactly in the footprint of the existing tree. There's an adjacent tree, and then another tree, and another tree that is in. Also, all the trees are in
All
the
in
right of way.
county right-of-way.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bob, while you're here, might as well ask one other question. Are there any other, we have the county documents before us in the appeals process. Is there anything in the Murphy's community plan or design standards or anything that's been applied in other parts of the town that might be informative as to how to treat this issue?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman, and it was not brought out in any of the discussions that we've had to date. There may very well be, but I'm just not aware of anything at this moment.
All right, thank you. All right, at this point, it's time for the applicant to come up and state their appeal and the reasons for it.
You want me to sign in?
Yes, please, and state your name for the
My
record.
name is Beth Hartline. I represent the Murphy's Historic Hotel. Unfortunately, Dorian could not be here today, so he sent me, and I may have to take a public speaking class or something if this keeps up, but... Okay. Just to answer any questions about the actual threshold and the sign, these are photographs of the sign back in 1943. This was the original Murphy's Hotel sign that was put up after the Mitchler changed it from the Mitchler to the Murphy's Hotel. So this is 1943. It's a very similar sign, and this is back in 1963. The sign has been there basically as a continuous use since 1881. So we've had a continuous use for over 100 years. My understanding is that this issue is not really about the pole or the sign, that's been approved 5-0 unanimously by the Planning Commission, that the issue before the board is now an encroachment permit to be able to put the pole in the ground in the county right-of-way. We would argue, first of all, that there's a pre-existing non-conforming continuous use of that sign where copy and content is immaterial. So as far as an advertising sign and the pole holding up an advertising sign, we feel that that part of the county code doesn't apply to this particular sign and is moot. However, that being said, the appeal is before the board that the encroachment permit is going to be denied to the Murphy's Hotel based upon this advertising content that the pole is holding up. So that the criteria for appealing this is threefold. One, we have to prove that we will be substantially damaged by the refusal for you to grant the permit and this appeal. We feel that we would be substantially damaged by not being able to erect a pole to hold up our hotel sign. Should the tree that's over 100 years old and really should have only lived 80 years die, this would mean that we would not be able to have our Murphy's Hotel sign out front because we can't erect a pole in the county right-of-way. I don't think that makes very much logical sense. We have been required to maintain an insurance policy on this tree should there be a safety issue, and we have done that since 1972. The inability to replace the tree with a pole to hold up the Murphy's Hotel sign out front of the main street that's visible by traffic from both sides of the street will irreparably harm our business financially and substantially hinder our ability to market the hotel. The second criteria is that there is no reasonable method to obtain the desired results except what we are proposing, which is to put a pole up to hold up the sign. We have tried several different things with the county. One was that the planning department suggested at some point that we attach the sign to the building, to the face of the building. And we did a tentative sign. We put up a sign to meet that requirement. We took photos of it, and we were not able to see the sign once it was put on the face of the building and extended out so far, you couldn't see it from either side of Main Street driving down, which took away our visibility. So we proposed that we extend the sign, and that extension of the sign was denied by the planning department because they said that it was extending too far into the right-of-way. Then we looked at attaching the sign. We looked at having a permit to put a bench around the sign with a metal hold thing that would hold up the tree in order to prevent the tree from collapsing. We would have a metal support for the tree, but the bench was considered an enhancement of the use of the sign, so that was denied. So what we asked was to change from the tree to an engineered pole that would be put into the ground to support the replacement sign with the appropriate engineering and the appropriate electricity to do that. The third thing that you're to talk about in terms of the appeal is granting of the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest, safety, health or welfare, or injurious to other property. In terms of public interest, almost 80 merchants and 30 residents signed a petition that basically said that they believed that this sign will be good for Murphy's as well as the Murphy's Hotel, and most of them said that the reason they signed it was not because they loved Dorian, but was because they thought the sign would increase their business. The petition read, "I believe that this sign will be good for Murphy's as well as the Murphy's Hotel." Regarding safety, the petition reads, "I understand that the tree holding up the current sign is over 100 years old and should be able to be replaced with a safer and tasteful support for the sign. A properly engineered pole will remove a current safety issue," which would be the tree. Health or welfare. The petition read, "I feel that for this historic landmark and icon of Murphy's, a sign of this nature is appropriate and the location should be visible from both sides of the main street, as is the current sign. Most businesses claim that the hotel sign will bring them more business." So there was no health or welfare issue. Injurious to other properties. There's no way for us to injure other properties. The properties around us are commercial properties as well as our property. And this sign has been in continuous use since 1881. So if there was going to be injury, I guess it would have been brought up by now. And I have a picture of the commercial businesses in the area of the Murphy's Hotel. All of these commercial businesses have signed the petition saying that they would want that sign at the Murphy's Hotel, and these are all commercial businesses that do business around the Murphy's Hotel. So there's 80 of them. I also have the petition here if you want to read the names. And I want to say that the Planning Commission has already approved a new pole and a sign with a unanimous vote of 5-0, that the approved sign attached to the new pole is in substantial conformance consistent with the present sign and is a legal pre-existing non-conforming sign where copy and content of the sign is immaterial. And lastly, the code stating that the pole cannot support an advertising sign we feel is not applicable to this case due to the hotel's sign ongoing and continuous use. So I urge you to accept our appeal and let us put our pole in so we can put up our sign.
Thank you. Any questions for the appellant?
Yes, why not replace the tree with the tree? I mean, it would be, a little more expensive than what, because they have the relief project on Murphy's where over the last few years they've been taking out the dead trees and replacing them. Why not just replace it with another tree?
We talked to the Murphy's Renewal and Relief people, and they have already put in the trees on the hotel's property that they feel are essential to their project. There's 3 trees. When we put in our new sidewalk, we put in water to these trees so that they would be continued to be fed and watered, and they do not want to replace that tree with another tree.
Well, it's not that they would do it, that maybe the hotel would do it or the community. I mean,
we're not interested in replacing a tree with another tree that would have a longevity problem. We'd like to see an engineered pole that would be safe and that would be available to hold up the sign. So to grow another tree or to put a tree in would take a long time to do that. We would prefer to have an engineered pole in there and just eliminate any of the safety issues 100 years from now or whatever.
Any other questions for the appellant? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we will take comments from members of the audience. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Tom Tryon. I would like to speak in opposition, in strong opposition to the granting of this variance. If you go over to the procedure, it says any person that is aggrieved by a refusal of a permit, in this instance the permit has been refused because it's clearly against county code, has to meet all 3 variance requirements. The first variance requirement is the applicant will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit as requested. That, in my opinion, is clearly not true. If that were true, all the other businesses in Murphy's would be out of business because they do not, and they are very prosperous businesses also, they do not have a big neon sign on a metal pole out in the county right-of-way. The idea that the Murphy's Hotel somehow's business is tied to a metal pole and a neon sign, which has not been there for over 40 years, in my opinion, basically discredits any claim that somehow the business is dependent upon this wholly newly designed sign that is located nowhere in the historical district of Murphy's or nowhere else in the historical district of Murphy's. Secondly, it says that no other reasonable method of obtaining the desired results is available except as proposed by the applicant. That clearly also is not true. There are other reasonable methods. The greatest concern, quite frankly, is the placing of a neon sign out in the county right-of-way where basically we have no neon signs outside of businesses in the historical district. To say that there are no other reasonable methods other than a neon sign, that's the only sign that could possibly be used to advertise the business of the Murphy's Hotel is just frankly nonsense. I mean, that is not true, nor is it done anyplace else in Murphy's, nor quite frankly in most of the historical districts in the county or neighboring counties. Are neon signs the only method for advertising one's business? That just is not true. Thirdly, that the granting of the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest, safety, health, welfare, or injurious to other properties. I would submit it is clearly against the public interest. That once we start doing neon signs in historical districts, not just in Murphy's, but in all historical districts, whether it be McCollum Hill or San Andreas or elsewhere, that is not in the public interest. If we're going to basically go neon in Murphy's, I think that will have a detrimental effect upon what we basically built up over the last 24 years in Murphy's, which is a community-based, basically on a historical, basically gold rush type environment in which it's blossomed into basically a wine center. It's blossomed into a wedding center, into a eating center of fine dining. It's a wonderful community. It's grown a lot. The businesses have prospered, certainly have prospered greatly in relation to other businesses and other historical districts. And one of the reasons is because we've been able to make a lot of good decisions over the last 24 years. We've made big steps forward, and we've made little steps forward, but most of the steps we've made in Murphy's have always been forward. This would be a huge, gigantic step backward. And if you grant the variance, you set a precedent. You basically are saying now that any business in a historical district or otherwise, since this appeal, excuse me, this appeal section does not is not constrained to historical districts. It's any commercial district. You're basically saying once you set this precedent that anybody can now come in and apply to put a metal pole up with a big neon sign out in the county right away. And you will be very difficult to say no. I mean, once you set this and you find these findings, how do you not find the findings for the next applicant? How do you not find the findings for the next applicant in Murphy's that comes in and says, I want a neon sign just like Dorian, only I want it to say my business and I want a different design on my neon sign. If these three findings are applicable to Dorian, they're applicable to every business in Murphy's. They're applicable to every business in Calaveras County, whether in a historical district or in a commercial district. I think you're making a very serious mistake if you basically put this precedent in place and open up Calaveras County, all commercial districts, historical and otherwise, to significant neon signs on metal poles out in the county right away. We just had a big hearing on the billboards in Valley Springs, and to me it comes down to much the same issue. It's going to define basically the environment that we're going to live in here, both the commercial environment and the residential environment. We put a lot of work into Murphy's to create what I think is a very positive commercial and residential environment, and it seems to be a very successful formula that we've been able to create there. I would like to get beyond then the three conditions for the appeal and talk about a couple other conditions. We have as Marita pointed out, we have a tree program in Murphy's where basically we take trees out and replace them with other trees. If we're going to take this tree down, it seems to me it should be replaced with another tree, not with a metal pole. And we're putting this metal pole and this neon sign in front, I believe, of the only building in Murphy's that's on the historical register. So the question becomes, is this really, the definition we want for the premier building in Murphy's on the historical register? Is a metal pole with a big neon cocktail glass on it out in the county right away that can be seen from one end of Main Street to the other end of Main Street? It strikes me that that is insanity to have that be our definition. I would like to just close with one emphasis, because it's come up. I've heard it from board members, and I've also heard it from the public, and the applicant put it into the record today, that somehow this is a historical non-conforming use, and they have a right to continue it. This is not an historical non-conforming use. If you read the three conditions that have to be found on the appeal process, you will see that there isn't one word or inference about an historical non-conforming use. The idea that this has any basis in historical non-conforming use and the decision before this board is absolutely false. This neon sign has not been there for 40 years. In those instances where a non-conforming historical use is valid, and it is not here, but those where it is, it goes to the sign or the use that's currently in place. It does not go back, and I think County Council can address this because he addressed it once before when this came before the board on non-conforming historical use. It does not go back to something that was there 40 years ago or in 1871. That is not the definition of a non-conforming historical use. It's the use that's currently in place when it's applicable, and it is not applicable here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak on this issue? Please step forward, sir. Oh, well,
beat him to it. You all know me. I'm Darrell Rusk. I live in Burson. And you also know that I'm very strongly pro-economic development and pro-business. I don't think I led anyone to be confused about that with regard to me. However, I am also very much concerned with the quality of that development. And I'm concerned about a neon sign in Murphy's. No one seems to have a problem locating Murphy's on the map or managing to drive there. They have a pretty strong tourist base. I have never known anyone not to be able to find Murphy's Hotel. My son and daughter-in-law spent this past weekend there. They managed to find it without a neon sign. I think a neon sign in what is the quality of Murphy's would be an intrusion, not an economic plus. So personally, you can put my vote down, and this hurts me to say. It hurts me to say. But you can put my vote down opposed to that sign.
Thank you.
Mr. Rusk, you're aware that the item before us today is it's not really, I mean, as I understand it, the rules under which the Planning Commission approved the sign.
Yes.
Twice, by the way. First they approved it, and then they approved it on an appeal, or on a 5-0. So what we're doing here today is the sign and its content and its methodology has been approved by a previous body. What we're doing is trying to decide whether here we got the front of the building. Our codes say that the Board of Supervisors has the ability to approve the location of a device in the right-of-way. Yep. The planning, I mean, the Public Works Director could not approve it because the code does not allow him the latitude to do that. However, we do have that latitude. So we're not, I mean, I suppose that there is a de facto argument that if we say that the pole can't go here, then the sign goes away. But in my mind, we're not talking about that.
And I understand that there are certainly other methods of putting up a neon sign in Murphy's. I understand that. And I understand that they could do that without using a pole. I understand that also. And I understand that it's within your power to make a decision with regard to the method.
But the point that I'm trying to get an agreement with you is that the neon sign has been approved by a previous body. We're just deciding the method of installing it here, or whether it can go in the right-of-way. There's nothing in the design guidelines of the city of, or the town of Murphy's
There's nothing that prohibits it.
that precludes it? Okay. So I have a lot of difficulty of this is essentially like changing. You were in a football game and we're losing the football game. So in the middle of the game, we decide that we're going to move the goalpost and make it more difficult for the other team to win. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
And I appreciate your position, and I appreciate your explanation of that to me, and thank you.
Okay. If people have some,
but I'm thinking in terms only a comment from the public with regard to the general issue, as well as the specific method of construction. And your vote today is really, as I understand it, solely with regard to method of construction.
But if it can be proven to me that neon signs in the future might be detrimental to the ambiance or the objectives of the merchants of Murphy's, then I'd certainly entertain the prospect of a specific ordinance prohibition in the future. But I don't like changing the goalpost when we're in the middle of a game.
Absolutely agree with you. And my comments were solely, I'll say, emotion-based. I think it would be prudent in the future to look at concerns regarding historic districts and what should be or should not be historic districts in the county. It may be prudent in the future, and maybe for future boards, to look at that issue. And I appreciate your understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other people who wish to address the board?
Yes, I'm Don Bose, a resident of Murphy's. I think it's essential to maintain the impact here that this sign is carrying a neon element. And neon really needs to be looked at very carefully. I know that we've all been embarrassed by things in our past and our youth and things we've seen and can still see in communities up and down the Central Valley, many other places where the residuals of the past have remained while new development takes on. And there's always been that sign that remains from the diner that spells out eats, or next to a modern building, a sign that remains that spells out shoe repair or spells out motel. And those have been things that we've seen and experienced still today. They're community embarrassments, I feel. Neon really came about as it followed the form of architecture, Art Deco architecture in the 20s and 30s. Well, Art Deco totally passed Murphy's. It blew by it, and there's nothing left in Murphy's. There is a little bit in Angels Camp, in the theater, in the marquee, and whatever's Art Deco. There's quite a bit of neon in there. That's appropriate. There's other places in the world that have great Art Deco with neon still today. In Pierre Village in North Island in New Zealand, for example, and some other surrounding communities. It's a grand exhibit of neon. There's other grand exhibits of neon artistically and following architecture today all over the world. For those of us who travel, you might find it just actually dumbfounding and awestruck. Takes your breath away when you see Shanghai, Xi'an, Guilin, where they underlight bridges and overpasses. It's a state of art. It's really an exemplary aspect of neon, the use of neon. I was just last Tuesday in the bowels of LaGuardia Airport in New York City, passing from Pier B to Pier C through one of these long tunnels. And it was delightfully lighted with neon in an artistic manner in the ceiling over the walking sidewalk, with a very artistic, probably the only medium that it could have been done with was neon, a beautiful flashing on and off neon effect of a rainbow. And it made walking through this dull tunnel a delight. But when you take historic communities such as Murphy's and others, Moke Hill and others in this county, putting neon in Murphy's is an insult. And the press can put that in capital letters with an exclamation point after it. It's an insult to the character and the heritage of our historic communities. And I think the sign that's proposed would probably create more controversy from people coming into town, guests or visitors, tourists, probably create more controversy when they saw that sign of why does that sign exist in a community like this than any inference that it's going to bring additional business to any business there. And I don't want to take any business away from any establishment of Murphy's, because I really believe in Murphy's. But neon's not going to do it. In fact, I think it would be best, I would highly recommend that you folks encourage the people that are writing the general plan to actually mandate no visible, from the street, no visible neon in Murphy's whatsoever. Take out all the stuff that's there now, from the Murphy's Toy Store open sign or closed sign or whatever it is, Foothill Restaurant, beer signs, the Les Noger beer signs, other signs. Just get rid of them. Shouldn't be allowed. There's as much signage crap in this community and this county anyway, but we can certainly get down to say neon does not belong in our historic communities. No way. Maybe inside the buildings, but not out visible from the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board on this topic? After we do the round, you're welcome to come back.
Good morning. John Couts. This issue is one that is far deeper than just a sign at the hotel. I've been involved in tourism. I was on the State Tourism Commission as CFO for 8 years. We have spent all the money that we can raise to help build tourism. I believe that we have also spent a lot of money here in Murphy's to build tourism. Now, if you look around to see what is happening, every town that I see is after branding itself. How do we identify ourselves? How do we differentiate ourselves to bring tourism into the town, into the area? Stockton just spent umpteen dollars. I mean, you wouldn't even want to know how many dollars they are spending on consultants to try and build an identity for Stockton. They're having a big tourism, agritourism meeting at the fairgrounds, I think, this next Saturday, on how do we build tourism in the agricultural sector. All of these rural counties have to think about, where is your source of income? Where is the economy coming from? And in the 40s, it was timber, lumber, cattle. But today, the only thing we have in these small rural counties is agritourism and tourism. We have managed to build a very fine boutique wine industry here, which has helped prosper the whole area. And it does a lot of things. When you have tourism, people come, bring money, leave money, they go back, and you don't have to build all the infrastructure, the schools, the welfare, everything else that goes along with it. And so what we have to really work on is how do we maintain our branding, our position as a neat, it's already there, it is a neat tourism town. We look how many restaurants have come into this community in the last 10 years. Look how many wineries, we've gone from 2 or 3 to 20-some wineries now. We have really built an agritourism community. Now, and I have nothing against the Murphy's Hotel or any people on this. It is a case of you put a big neon sign out there in the middle of Murphy's, you have just totally changed the character of town. And I could just see at the other end of town another neon sign going up, and then you've now blown the town. You've now changed the entire character of the town. And I'm sorry I didn't get involved earlier. I didn't realize, I thought it was something that was just going to go away. But I feel very passionate about what effect it could have on Murphy's and your whole county, because your county's facing the same problem. How do we bring economic income into the county? So I would propose as a possible program is let's set up a community town hall meeting. Let's bring in some of the experts that have been working on rural tourism. Let's bring them in, have a town hall meeting, let everybody get the pros and the cons of it. And then if the people want to have neon signs, fine. If they decide it's in the best economic interest of the whole area, then let's some really nice signs, but not neon and out in the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take questions if you have.
Anybody got any questions?
Sure.
Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
Mr. Couts, I'm very much an advocate of communities having self-determination be part of their their hopes and aspirations, and I'm troubled here with the fact that I see evidence that 80 of the businesses that are on Main Street have said, we endorse this sign, we think it'd be a good idea, we have no objections, in fact we're very much in support of it. We have, so far we've had 3 people, including a county supervisor, who incidentally is well, I'll ask this question later, but there are very few people that are coming here very late in the game, and you heard me say a moment ago that the sign, in my mind, has been approved. We're just talking about where the methodology for putting it up. This is not a public hearing to discuss the pros and cons of a neon sign. I mean,
I heard you, Russ,
okay.
and I understand. I apologize. I just didn't realize early on that this thing would ever go anywhere. And so it's got past me, and I apologize for that. Well, but I do believe that if you have a meeting with those same 80 people that have signed, because they all want to be friends with the Hotel in Dorian, I don't blame them. They would sign because of that. But I think if they sit down and hear the pros and the cons of what they're doing to their town, I think you might see a change in their mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? I think there's 2 more that want to speak at this. Well, never mind. Next.
Hi, Carl Stoughton. I completely agree with John Couts. I never thought that it would go this far either. I thought that it would be stopped a long time ago. Neon sign downtown Murphy's is just a bad idea, and it would change the character of that little town. I thought it would be stopped at the planning commission. It wasn't stopped there. I guess that reflects on your choices of planning commissioners. I thought it could be stopped today, and I hope it is, but I see 3 people that hate Tom up there. Hopefully they'll make a decision not based on personal ambivalence for somebody. Thank you.
I would hope that everybody in this audience would recognize that this board, while it has differences of opinion and likes and dislikes about one another, makes up its mind based on the facts before it, and that we have done everything that we can to not be personal in our voting patterns, which can be evidenced by a review of the record, which shows that many of us vote with Tom on some issues and not on others. I think it's an unfortunate insertion into this dialogue here.
Thank you,
and I
Mr.
think you need to defend yourself. Thank you.
And yes, you've been trying to rise to speak for some time now.
Good morning. My name is Ron Klass, and I live here in Murphys, Calaveras County. I came here because of the fact that I'm under the same impression that that this meeting is not about the sign, it's about the logistics as to where the sign would be placed. Is that correct?
It is what is before us today, and I would actually like to remind everybody of this, is a question of whether or not an encroachment permit is to be made. It would require 3 findings. It does not deal at all with the question of the nature of the sign. It has to do with the encroachment permit to put it up.
Well, that was my understanding.
And maybe the county council would like to further define what's before us.
Well, just to point out a couple of things. That first of all, the decision by the Planning Commission is not binding on your board, and the evidence regarding the nature and the construction of the sign would be relevant to the 3rd finding, the question of whether it's detrimental to public interest. So my guess is that those points would be fair game for the board to consider.
Thank you.
So even though the decision, even though the sign has been technically approved, it's still open for conversation. Is that what he's saying?
That certain aspects of the sign may, I believe, if I can interpret, may be detrimental to the public interest, safety, health, and welfare, or injurious to another party. I think that's the criteria number 3 is what admits that discussion into play here.
Well, then, excuse me, then what I would like to express is the fact that no one really appreciates neon, especially in this time of day, this time of economic situations kind of make you want to stretch yourself. Trust me, my family has 5 businesses in Murphys on Main Street. And contrary to what has been said here today, business is very difficult. Not difficult, it's very difficult. Anyone who has their own business has to look at areas and opportunities to maintain their business. Each month they have overheads that they have to meet. It's not a paycheck, it's a business. And how far we're allowed to stretch that investigation, of course, is determined by many factors. The county is certainly one of them. I happen to think that neon is giving way to the beauty of neon in the 30s and 40s. Maybe we could have somebody up there smoking a cigarette and blowing smoke up or something. But I think neon is past its time. It really has passed its time. But if you look at Murphys, and if you look at the historical district of Murphys, which nobody really knows where that begins and ends, they really don't. Depends on what side of the argument they're on. But if you look at the old business that just has reopened, the Nugget, for what it's worth, it has 11 neon signs, 11 in their buildings. Now, granted, they're attached to the inside of the windows, but they have every advertisement known to mankind for beer and whatever. Now, is this part of the historical development or historical area? It most certainly is. Because in order to come into Murphys, you have 3 ways. And that happens to be, besides Murphys Gray Road, the Tom Bell Road is certainly one that brings people into Murphys, brings it into the new development of Murphy's as well as the old part of Murphy's. Again, I do not like the thought of having a neon sign in Murphy's. But if my understanding is correct, and I really came here to talk about where it should be put, but if my understanding is correct, the sign is being done in a manner of historical value. Now, I've talked to most all of the retailers on Main Street. And again, it depends on how the question has been posed to them, interestingly enough. Some people have proposed the question is, do you want neon in town? You know, it's like that Chicken Little thing. I happen to think that if it's done well, in my opinion, if it's done well, I think it would be a very added attraction to the historical, and I'm not talking about the gold rush days, but I'm talking about the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, the historical time of that particular hotel. That particular hotel is, whether we like to admit it, and some people don't, because of the old alchemy development and whatnot, that is the anchor to Murphy's. It's truly, truly the anchor of Murphy's. All shopping centers have an anchor store. This hotel is one. God forbid we ever lose this hotel, because we will lose our identity as far as the historical value of Murphy's. So I'm not asking for this board to make exceptions, but what I am asking the board to do is to take in consideration today, when businesses are very, very up against it, and will be for the next few years, to not necessarily make leeway, but to understand what an individual is doing with regards to his or her business. And what they're trying to do is to keep it alive, keep it profitable, keep their notes payable, keep their employees employed, and keeping the people that come into the community happy that they came and will be coming back. Every day, and I'm on Main Street 6-7 days a week, every day people come into my stores or my restaurants and mention not only Ironstone, which of course is the number one mention, because it really, obviously woke this community up, but they also mention the historical value of the hotel, sometimes comically, sometimes with awe. But we can't lose this amazingly beautiful, historical, valuable asset to Murphy's. And if that means finding the right type of value-added neon sign depicting the history of the hotel, not the fact that you can get a drink there, then I don't see why this should be a consideration. As to it blocking the traffic, if the traffic flows, I think that is very easy, should be very easy to accomplish. I mean, we have a group of people here in the government that certainly should be able to accomplish that. I think this has been taken into such a personal level that it's almost to a point of nausea, forgive me, but it really is. If you don't want a neon sign in Murphy's, then you're going to have to pass a law that there's no neon signs permitted. And that means the Nugget has to take their signs out, the bag lady has to take their signs out, the toy store has to take their signs out, the boutique store is going to have to take their signs out. And it's going to become it's going to become a joke. So, ladies and gentlemen, please look at this neon sign not as we're going to neon Murphy's, but that it could bring in a little nostalgia to a town that has had a tremendous success since the Ironstone people come in. And we are now suffering from the tourism who are coming into town, because they are still coming. But if you walk around Main Street, you will see that there's fewer bags. Rather than a case of wine, it's two bottles. So we really are feeling it. And the last thing we need is what Sonora is suffering with and what Angels Can is suffering with, and that's doors that have nothing in them. And there are a number of businesses on Main Street today that in a very few months, if things don't change, there'll be empty storefronts. So please take that into consideration. And you know that you're more than capable of finding a proper place for this sign to where it won't interfere with the flow of traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Citizen Tryon returns to is there anybody else who wishes to speak who has not yet spoken? And we, of course, will have the applicant or appellant come back as well. All right, please step forward.
I'd just like to answer some of the questions, and I'll start with Supervisor Thomas's comments, which I believe to be wholly inaccurate. Because if you were to grant this variance request, that would be changing the rules of the game in the middle of the field. Or excuse me, changing the rules in the middle of the game. As Ron pointed out, he says, well, neon's permitted in Murphy's, but we need to pass an ordinance that says, no, you can't have neon in Murphy's. Well, we have an ordinance right here. Here's the county code. You cannot have a sign like this out in the county right-of-way. We have it. The question is are the terms of a variance met? I'm a little different than Don. I don't mind neon on the inside of the buildings. I look at that more as a private property right, but there is no private property right in the county right-of-way. That's county ground. That's not a private citizen ground. So to answer Ron's question, we have the ordinance. To elaborate, what I would call elaborating further on Supervisor Thomas's comments and on County Council's comments, I believe the neon sign per se, along with any sign, is before the board at this time. If you look at the three conditions for the variance, let me read them again. First, that the applicant will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit as requested. You know, you could obviously make a determination that a different request would have a different outcome. So as requested, I think, does place neon very much before the board as far as a consequence of this variance request. You go to item 2, that no other reasonable method. That tells you right there that you have alternatives to look at. You have alternative, reasonable methods to entertain before you decide that this is the optimum method, I guess, or the best method that this board wishes to choose. That gives you nothing but discretion. You go down to item 3, that the granting of the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest. I think there's plenty of testimony, both by myself and the others that have followed me, that it is detrimental to the public interest. There will be a great detriment to where Murphy's is today and how you're going to define Murphy's basically going forward. So I think all of that is basically before you within the variance, within all three of those conditions of the variance request. Let me touch on a couple other comments. First off, let me just mention that this issue of having signs in the county right-of-way has come up before. When we did the Arbors project at the four-way intersection there at the Nugget and Davies Store, and where the Arbors project was, there were a lot of signs on a tree right there. And we had a lot of controversy about removing all those signs out of the county right-of-way when we did the Arbors project. They were not neon signs, they were wooden signs. And we removed them. And they're no longer there in the county right-of-way. This is not unprecedented. The county has asserted this authority in the past and has asserted this authority in Murphy's in the past, particularly in conjunction with new construction. Let me talk on a couple other points that Ron brought up, where he basically says that there's some sort of historical value to neon signs in Murphy's, or particularly this neon sign in Murphy's, though it hasn't been there for 40 years. I would submit there is no historical value in Murphy's today for a neon sign that hasn't been there for 40 years, any more than what we need for economic development in this county is more hydraulic mining, because we did that in the late 1800s, so let's fire up the water cannons. I mean, that makes no sense at all. You have to look at it on the merits of where we are today and what is in our best interest. Ron mentions about how, well, this is business enhancing. I think he's absolutely wrong. I think it'll be business destroying. This is not a business enhancing action. If the board grants the variance, it will be very negative, in my opinion, to the businesses in Murphy's and to the growth of businesses in Murphy's. I will just like to, well, let's talk one other issue, and that is the City of Angels paid, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars for Roger Brooks to come in and do a branding for the City of Angels. The first thing he said for historical districts is you got to get rid of neon. You got to get rid of neon in the historical districts if you want to have an historical district that will be prosperous and successful. And that's what he said. And he reinforced it at a private dinner afterwards when I talked to him at some length on the issue. So now we come before us, let's start introducing neon in the historical district of Murphy's. That makes no sense at all. At one of the candidate forums in Murphy's, I had a person come up afterwards because the neon sign came up as a question in the community forum. And the individual was from Nevada City, and he says, geez, Tom, I'm really for you on let's not have Murphy's go neon. The first thing they had to do when to clean up Nevada City and make Nevada City what it is today is to get rid of the neon signs. And he said, for God's sakes, let's not do that here in Murphy's. If you look in the Stockton Record from about 2 weeks ago, Dana's paper, they had a nice article on, I believe it was Brussels, and they were wanting to restore the historical district in Brussels. And in the article it said the first thing they have to do is get rid of the neon signs. I mean, I don't understand why we're here. I don't understand how it could have possibly have gotten this far. It does not meet any of the conditions of the variance, none whatsoever of the variance. And you do this, you set a precedent. That means any business in Murphy's can come out now and request a neon sign out in the county right-of-way on a metal pole. And if the board's going to sit in here and decide what sign's beautiful and what sign isn't beautiful, and the board's going to decide, we'll design the sign for you, et cetera, that's crazy. I mean, the board has absolutely, it's just playing with dynamite if you're going to get into that level of detail. So that completes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I would invite the appellant to come and answer any questions that may have come up that you wish to illuminate.
I'd like to bring this back to the issue. The issue is a denial of the permit for an encroachment permit to be able to stick the pole in the ground in the county right-of-way. This is not an issue about neon. Neon is allowed in the ordinance. What the ordinance says is no blinking and no moving parts. This is not a lady whose legs are going open and closed like this with blinking lights. Neon is allowed in the ordinance, period. That's not the issue. The sign is not the issue. The sign has already been approved. This is not a variance. This is an appeal to the board to overrule the Public Works Department, who said that they had no alternative but to bring this before the board because the code says no advertising sign. Second of all, or third of all, or fourth of all, this is a non-conforming, pre-existing legal sign. This is not something that anyone in the community of Murphy's can put up. This is something that's been there for over 100 years. It's a continuous use. This is not about which sign has been there since 1881. This is about a continuous use of a sign, not the sign. There is no sign that's going to last for 150 years. You're going to have to change the sign. The original sign was a neon sign, so there you have it. That's historic. As far as not wanting another tree in the community, the Relief and Renewal Committee has said they do not want to replace this with another tree. They already have enough trees in Murphy's. It's hard to see the signs that are up as it is with all the trees in Murphy's. And I would like to read to you the petition that we have from the 80 businesses so you know what they signed. The petition says, I am in favor in bringing back a replica of the original Murphy's Hotel sign from 1943. I feel that for this historic landmark and icon of Murphy's, a sign of this nature is appropriate, and that the location should be visible from both sides of Main Street, as is the current sign. I understand that the tree holding up the current sign is over 100 years old and should be able to be replaced with a safer and tasteful support for the sign. I believe that this sign will be good for Murphy's as well as the Murphy's Hotel. The people who signed this are as follows: Murphy's Hotel, Hatcher Winery, Murphy's Motorcycle Company, Murphy's Jewelry Company, Best Friends Consignment Shop, Studio California, Saca, Maine, Lube Room, Dorrington Hotel, Knickknacks, Animal Kingdom Store, Country Flower Hutch, Sierra Sunwear, Laney's Closet, Villa Mia Antiques, Black Sheep Winery, Piazza, Alchemy, Next, Noto's Restaurant, Foothills Restaurants, Murphy's Inn Motel, Century 21 Sierra Properties, Murphy's Barbershop, The Corner Shop, Milliere Winery.
We have a list of all of these.
I would like to say that there are 80 businesses, so if there's a concern about what the businesses feel about this sign in Murphy's, I would like to put forward the petition and all those who signed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
We are in possession of that list, and it is quite extensive.
Beth, excuse me. There has been a suggestion here by a number of people that, by golly, if we approve this neon sign, that there's going to be a rush to the county to have everybody in town apply to have neon signs on poles in the right-of-way. Do you have any sense that that's likely to happen?
My sense is that people wanted this particular sign because it was a historic icon in Murphy's, and that it should be put back up. There was no indication to me that everybody was going to rush to do that, and as I said, this is a legal pre-existing non-conforming sign. Not everyone in Murphy's has a legal non-conforming pre-existing sign, so you can't put it up in the county right-of-way without permission. So we have one of those signs that's grandfathered in. The rest of the community may not have that.
Okay. Just for clarification, you have a tree there now. You have the sign that it's attached to the tree. Is there anything that would prevent you this afternoon from going out and installing your neon sign on that tree?
Well, the tree is considered by the county and the planning department as a potential safety issue. They've required us to insure that tree to make sure that it doesn't fall over into Main Street. At this point, the tree has outlived its longevity. The longevity of that particular tree is 80 years old. It's over 100 years old. So we are trying to protect the community and Main Street by putting up an engineered pole that will be erected and be safe and decorative and continuous with our sign. An erection of a pole for the sign. The sign's got to be on something. To put it on another tree is, to me, absurd.
But in reality, you could. I mean,
would we have to grow the tree?
No. I mean, the tree. I mean, maybe the tree is only going to last a week, but at least for a week that you'd have the ability to put your sign up on that tree. And you know what I'm just trying to impress upon the board is that the pole that you want to put in is exactly in the same footprint as the existing tree.
Yes.
Okay, Beth, when you said the original sign, that means the sign that's there now, not the sign that was there in the 40s and 50s, which is what is the legal non-conforming use. Are you saying, you said the original sign, that would be going back to the 1800s.
For us, the verbiage is continuous use. It doesn't mean the same exact sign has been there, which is not true. The same exact sign has not been there. If this was not going to be admitted 40 years ago, you shouldn't have never have allowed another sign, a plywood sign, to be put in the place of the neon sign that's been there forever.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back to the board for discussion. Before we do so, I want to just make sure that we have some clear basis for it. First, as I understand it, one of our number has recused himself from this vote. Is that a formal recusal, or was this done for the discussion?
I think that's up to the supervisor. I understood he recused himself.
Well, yes, I thought I heard that, but I wanted to make sure that we had that clear before we proceed.
Are you asking me or the supervisor, Mr. Tryon?
Well, I would ask the supervisor.
Under the advice of county council.
Okay, thank you. Which, as I understand it, means that if we were to grant the encroachment permit and uphold the appeal, then it would require 3 votes to do so. That if this were a 2-2, this would be essentially result in a denial of this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, we'll proceed on that basis. Who would like to make comment?
I have some questions of council.
Okay, let's go there first.
Does the board have the latitude to waive the code or give direction to change the code? I know the latter, and what about the former?
Obviously, the board can't waive the code. The code provides a procedure to grant the relief that's requested, but not to just disregard the code. You could always direct staff to bring back a change to the code, but that would not apply retroactively here.
So given that we do not have the latitude to waive the code, then it's a moot point that we even vote on this, because we can't waive the code. We cannot grant an encroachment permit in the county right-of-way for the pool.
Oh, that's a stretch.
Well, that depends on what the board, how the board makes the findings that are spelled out in the appeal procedure.
Right. There are three findings that were outlined earlier in this. We would have to find affirmatively in all three to be able to grant the encroachment permit.
Yes.
Okay.
I would also point out that the issue of pre-existing non-conforming use is really a legal doctrine that applies to a private property, to zoning issues, and to issues that don't conform to zoning regulations on private property. There's no entitlement established on public property by a pre-existing use. But that doesn't change the issue of the three findings that you're asked to make here in order to grant relief.
Basically, it boils down to these three findings.
The three findings are what drive the decision. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor. Are you complete with your questions, Supervisor Callaway?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, reserve right for future questions, but let's move to Supervisor Thomas for a moment.
Okay. Well, let's bring this back to some semblance of reality. I mean, when you're talking about the county right-of-way, I mean, there is an inherent, the discussion should be concerning itself with traffic flow, with obstructions to visibility and the likes of those things. I mean, clearly, we had a situation here some months ago where we forced a guy to take down some concrete columns and fencing that was out in the right-of-way because it was an obstruction to the safety of that street. It was in the right-of-way, so we had him take it out. Now, in my mind, this has no similarity whatsoever, because you have a situation where the county right-of-way is at the front wall of the buildings of that town. Now, is it even remotely realistic that we're going to ask people to take all the sidewalks that extend into the public right-of-way, to remove them? Are we going to ask the Tree League to take out the trees that are in the right-of-way? No. So what harm is there in approving a replacement of the tree that's holding up the sign with a pole that will hold up the sign in exactly the same location, that is not offering any additional restriction to the free flow and safe flow of traffic, pedestrian traffic? There are even some lovely clay planters and stuff out in this area that stick out beyond where this pole is proposed to go. So that I don't know where, Supervisor Callaway, where you're going with this right-of-way issue. If you're suggesting that by putting that pole there that it's going to somehow make the situation any less safe than it is today, then I would submit to you that that's not the case at all. On the issue of whether Supervisor Tryon is going to vote on this thing, I mean, it seems very odd to me, extremely odd, that the ruling here that says that a decision maker's participation is in a quasi-judicial matter. You're supposed to not participate in that. So learned counsel is the fact that Supervisor Tryon is continuing to insert his opinions and he's not supposed to participate because he's prejudged this matter. So his continued clutching at trying to grab this thing back from the goal line at the Planning Commission and then again here, is this participation? I'd just like a clarification on whether his involvement here constitutes participation. And if it does constitute participation, I want to lodge a personal complaint about that. It's offensive.
There are some conflicts rules that are statutory and are based on a financial interest. Those are broad and they preclude not just voting but participation even in the discussion. Those do not apply to this situation. This is the so-called common law rule of conflict of interest, and it doesn't deprive the supervisor of his free speech rights to make comments on the issue. So, no, I think that the rule here is clear that it may preclude his vote, but not his public comments and participation in the discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or procedural matters before we get into the substance of this encroachment appeal? All right. Which supervisor would like to speak first on, or Marita, do you have any other questions before proceeding?
No.
All right. Who would like to comment on their position on the matter?
Go ahead.
All righty. This issue for me, folks, is, I hate to use this word because it'll evoke some feelings that maybe I don't have, but it's not that complicated. I hate to use the word that it's simple, but it may be. By that, I don't mean that it's easy at all, because I've listened to the arguments on both sides of the issue, and I understand the emotion involved here, and I have respect for everybody who has made comments here and the merits of those comments. However, I have to say that I agree with the applicant here, and the reason for that is the fact that this sign has been there in one way or another for over 100 years. Mr. Klass made reference to how hard, the difficult time businesses are having. I certainly wouldn't want a business to stop their advertising or to reduce their advertising. I actually didn't realize that neon was going to be the largest issue here today, but it seems to be. Neon is, for lack of a better term, I guess Art Deco, and it is of some historical value in itself, depending on what year folks decide is historical and which is modern. Those signs are pretty common if they're done tastefully. I don't see any argument with them. You're right, I would not want to see a big flashing Las Vegas type sign out on this main street of Murphy's, that's for darn sure. Most of the towns in this county have neon signs. How many of them stick out into the right-of-way? I have no idea. But those of you that are at least my age know that 30, 40, or 50 years ago, these tastefully done signs were common for anywhere, any business that had dining and cocktails. And in this county, they were in almost every town that had a saloon or a lounge or a bar, if you will. Just in asking around, I've come up with perhaps 12 to 14 of them. Some of them are still in existence. You come to Calaveras County, I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 town sites listed in this county. I can't think of one of those town sites that is not historical. So obviously all these towns are historical. They've gone through various phases of development, advertising, business, and criteria that they had to meet to be in business like that. The issue for me today is the appeal for the variance to have a sign in the county right-of-way. And based on the evidence that we've heard here today, I believe that there has been a sign in the county right-of-way for this particular business. And that's another thing. For me, this is not about personalities as well. I think Supervisor Tryon mentioned the rest of the businesses are going to say, I want a sign like Dorian. Well, I don't know if Dorian's going to own that business next year or who is. That's not the issue. The issue is whether the Murphy's Hotel has a sign in the town of Murphy's. And so I think that the sign has been there long enough that it has some historical validity to it, and it should stay there. For me, the biggest single issues are the three findings that this board is trying to evaluate and see if they apply here. The applicant will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit as requested. The permit is to have a sign in the right-of-way in roughly the exact same place it is right now. So to deny this would mean that they have to reduce their advertising, take their sign down. The sign has been there for 120-some years. So I would think that that is substantial damage. I don't know of a business, there may be one, but I don't know of a business that would not be damaged if their ability to advertise their business was restricted or taken away. No other reasonable method of obtaining the desired result is available except as proposed by the applicant. Well, to have a sign in that location is to have a sign in that location. No other sign is allowed to stick out there. I mean, you can't place it on the building and have it the same effect unless, I mean, this is, I hate to sound facetious, but I guess you could imagine that a sign could levitate out there. If you're going to put a sign where this sign has been all these years, there has to be some method of support for that sign, some method of support. The design of that support and the sign itself are subject to review by the planning department and the planning commission. But to have a sign in that place, it has to have support. And I believe this appeal is to grant the encroachment permit to put an appropriate support there. The third one, granting of the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest, safety, health, and welfare, or injurious to the property. Well, it's already been decided that the current support for that sign is dangerous, and so it cannot stay there. And the issue for me here is they simply want to put an engineered or safe support for a sign that exists there, and the applicant has agreed to share that cost with the county. So it's not about the sign for me, although I will say that after listening to what council has to say about that, I don't argue with the sign either, provided it's done in a tasteful way. The sign is about accepting the encroachment permit application. The petition that the applicant has published and brought to this board more than once is another evidence that the businesses that are on Main Street in Murphy's seem to be in support of this. There are nearly 80 businesses here, plus 30 residents, so it's not like there is a groundswell of disapproval for this. So I guess that's pretty much how I feel about this. I believe that the applicant has made those findings.
Thank you. Supervisor Callaway?
Cut to the chase, I'm going to deny the encroachment permit. And I think it was last night I was coming up Murphy's Grade Road into Murphy's. It's about 8 o'clock, 8:30. And I saw the Murphy's Hotel sign with the pink lights, which I thank all the merchants for doing pink lights for the month of October. And I kept thinking about today's issue before the board. But the issue is not the neon sign. I do not want a neon sign in Murphy's. The code allows a neon sign in Murphy's. So, you know, if Christine's mad about shoes, snacks, want to put their Christine mad about whatever, all the signs that are hanging, and they want to put neon, they can. If Murphy's decides they want to become an Art Deco town versus what they are now, then that can be up to the Murphy's Business Association to say that's how we want to be branded. But I don't think that's how Murphy's has developed their reputation. Tourism is the lifeblood of Murphy's. And they have an image and an identity, and I think the businesses are doing a wonderful job of promoting the community. as someone here earlier said, they've branded themselves. It's like Angels Camp is trying to find a brand, or Nevada City, or Sutter Creek, or Amador City, but that's not the issue before us. The issue before us is taking out a tree and putting in a pole. And I don't like the precedent that is going to set. I mean, does it tie into my feeling on the neon side? Possibly. But there's a tree there now, and it's a dead tree, or soon-to-be dead tree, and it's a beautiful addition, and I don't want a metal pole there. I would rather see a tree there. I do not believe that the requirements that they will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit, and there's no other reasonable method of obtaining desirable results. And the things that Bill talked about. I mean, Bill was very eloquent, and I thought, yes, I would really like to agree with Supervisor Claudino on this, but I can't. So getting back to something Russ said, the sign isn't the issue before us. The encroachment into the county right-of-way is, and replacing a tree with a pole is not acceptable to me, and I don't think that's the direction that Murphy should be going, is now putting poles in the county right-of-way for signs, whatever that might be. So I will not vote for the encroachment permit. I feel bad. This has been going on for 18 months for the applicant. It is emotionally charged, but trying to back away from that. This is the moment of decision-making, and that's where mine is.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Okay, it was John Kaus that came up and said that the issue is deeper than a sign at the hotel, and to me it very much is deeper, and it goes to whether we're open for business in Calaveras County. I, for one, do not want this county to continue to have the growing reputation that we, whether the planning commissioner or the planning department, or that we will change the rules in the middle of the game. I constantly hear people just bemoaning the fact that they applied to do something, they asked all the right questions, they were given the responses that encouraged them to make an investment in this community or in this county, and they are in this quagmire of having the rules changed in the middle of the game, and it's very distressful to me to have that happening, and I don't want to see it happen here. So I'm very much in agreement with Supervisor Claudino. I have no difficulty at all making the 3 findings.
I guess it's up to me, and I have a number of comments to make before making my position known. Truthfully, I came in here with a variety of opinions mitigating in several directions, the first of which is that it appears to me that taste and the definition of historic appears to be in the eye of the beholder. I have an 18-year-old daughter who thinks my musical tastes are historic and bad. So I know that there are different views. And inasmuch as democracy matters, there are a number of different elements of that. People in a district elect somebody to represent them in matters like this, and the representative, while stepping down from this discussion, has been most articulate in his concerns about the sign. At the same time, it appears that almost every business, and particularly those businesses that are right adjacent in this historic town, which has already been described as one of our I guess, our most beautiful and most prosperous towns in Calaveras, but that we have 80 people with businesses that appear to be nearly unanimous in the town, weighing in the other direction. We have an ordinance that permits neon signs, and we have a community that has done a whole lot of work on many other aspects of design review, and certainly has led this county in trying to brand itself, and rather effectively in my view. And yet there's nothing in the community plan and very little in the previous discussion before the Planning Commission that gives an indication other than the elected representative and the 80, as you try to weigh out where this community is on this. That's pretty much what we've got before us. As has been described by Supervisor Claudino, we seem to have a technical matter before us which has grown into a much larger thing that is symbolic of our differences in taste and definitions of historic. And that this is something that we have in all of our communities. There are people who are newcomers, there are people who are old-timers, and there's people who are very old-timers, and each may have a completely different idea of the meaning of neon. Personally, years ago when I first went through the O'Hare Airport and in that section that goes, that tunnel that is all lit up with neon, I thought it was one of the most magical things I'd ever seen. Driving back from Montana last week, I went through Winnemucca, Wells, Sparks, where neon had been abused to the point of being a disgustorama. So there's a lot of different takes on this. My personal preference, and the thing that concerns me the most, actually, in this is that we would be creating a precedent that would take something that I'm not sure is all that great looking and expand its use beyond the historic or the original site. And I would ask at this point of the County Council whether it's possible for us to make a finding within the three categories that could be specific to this site, that would reference a location that has been used for signage in that place for over a certain number of years, with a tree that can no longer safely hold the sign, and that we would be making a decision in favor of the appeal based on the limited nature and findings, so that we would not be setting the precedent that a number of people have raised concerns about here. I share those concerns, and I want to make sure that whatever we do does not spark a proliferation before this community has had a chance. I don't know how they had that oversight and all the planning that's gone over there. I'm a little astonished not to be getting some clear instructions or written documents to guide us from Murphy's itself. But if this was to proceed, are there ways that our findings can limit the impact of that to this specific site, or as close to that as possible? I know we can't name the site and say that's the only thing, but are there conditions that would be so specific as to disallow proliferation?
Well, as a matter of law, what you decide on this is not precedent for other applications. As a practical matter, I suppose that it would be argued that by the next applicant that that's now the second request for an exception. So I guess my recommendation would be that if the board makes those findings, that they specify that the findings are unique to this particular piece of property because of these unique circumstances. I also, since you asked, would suggest that if you vote to have the Public Works Department accept this appeal, you give the Public Works Department the opportunity to impose all of its usual conditions on an encroachment permit that everybody else would have, which would be an indemnity agreement with the county and provision that the encroachment would be removed if circumstances change. The typical conditions that are applied to any encroachment permit. So that would be my suggestion.
But that's not binding on anyone else who chooses to ask for the same thing.
Right. I don't see any way to make this binding one way or the other on a future applicant.
Each applicant stands on its own merit.
Let me try to explain what I'm trying to get at, which is I do not want anything that happens today to actually be an advantage for somebody trying to use it as a precedent, so that if we were to say very specifically and define it narrowly, it would make it less likely to be an effective use of precedent.
I can't see how any future county council could suggest that this decision has an effect on a future board and how it should make the findings, these three findings, in some future discrete situation.
All right. Well, I would hope that we would have findings that would be as specific and limiting as possible, and with that crafted, I would support the appeal. So I guess the question is, can we fashion such language? I'll be specific about how I see the three aspects. Regarding the no other reasonable method of obtaining, there have been other reasonable methods, but those have been denied, so they're not actually possible to use. So I think for whatever reasons, and I'm not
Denied
even...
by whom?
By our own administrative processes. This has been going on for...
I thought they were denied by the applicant. They reviewed them, not by the county.
As I understand it, there were conditions that we put into it that made it unviable. And that there were several iterations of this prior to now, which is one reason why it's gone so long. As regards the granting of the permit being materially detrimental to the public interest, again, the public interest has been expressed in divergent ways, but the preponderance of businesses right next door have supported doing this. On safety, I find that, and health and welfare, I find that hanging a large sign from a dead tree or a dying tree is a safety problem, and that in fact this mitigates toward an improvement that at least nobody's going to get, with unfortunate timing, bonked by a sign. And as regard to injurious to other property, that's the debate that I discussed earlier. I would hope that we would have the community of Murphys make an unequivalent. I think that the idea of having a community meeting and having, and this is not my district, so I can't hold that, but I would suggest that one be held and that people determine what they'd like to do in the future, and if so, add that to their community plan so that we have a good idea of what the particular taste of the town as a whole is. Again, all I have is the expressed and written taste of the businesses surrounding it, and the testimony here, or public comment here. The hardest for me is the question of applicant being substantially damaged. And I've heard the applicant's concern that they be noticed, that they have a signage. We've heard a lot of arguments from different businesses, and this gets into real questions of community intent versus what I see as, to some extent, a property right, or things that have been brought to this board's attention as property and business right. And those things are often in conflict. I'm not surprised to see it once again take a new twist. But the signage, at least talking with the Chamber of Commerce and talking with business people, seems to be important in bringing in business. And what image it conveys is often that business is to decide. Sometimes there's completely failed signage. Sometimes it's actually repulsing the very people we're trying to attract. But I don't arrogate it to me, in the absence of ordinances to the contrary, to make that determination. So on the margins, I can also find for finding number one. I would request at this point that we would add those things that I had referred to strengthen the findings in relation to there not being indicators of a board will to spread neon throughout Murphy's.
I can do that. As I understand it, the board would be directing me or us to add a paragraph that indicates that this decision is not intended to have any value as precedent in any future application, not intended to determine signage in the township of Murphy's, that sort of language.
That's a true statement anyway. This decision is only for this particular request, and if every request has to sign on its own, then we don't really need to put that in. And in terms of other neons, the only way we can get rid of that is to change the sign code in our zoning code.
I agree with that. As a strictly legal matter, there is no precedent value in what the board decides today. I'm just trying to put something in here that may send that signal to some future applicant, if that helps.
I would not, and the reason for this from my perspective, and to me this is not legally essential, but it is a conveyance to other boards, if any, and the community, that it is not the intent by our decision today to encourage or to proliferate the use of neon in signage. And that, so if anybody ever asks the intent of this board today, that would be well conveyed in the language of our findings.
Okay, so let me give an example. You have Christine's sign that comes out over the sidewalk. It says Christine's. And why do I know? Because they shop at Christine's. And so if Christine decides to take that sign and put in a neon that says Christine's, under county code, she can do that. She doesn't need a permit to do that. Adding that to this isn't going to change that. Mad About Shoes, same. Snack, same. The businesses along the same side where Ron's is, the jewelry store, they can all change their signs and put neon in without any permission from the county because our code says they can. So, you know, I don't like to add things that, in my opinion, really, what kind of message? The only message we can send is if we say that we want to change our code and effective today, we are not going to accept any more applications for neon signs in Calaveras County until we do our codes. Change our codes. That's the only way it has any meat to it.
That's not accurate. Our code says no application will be accepted nor permitted. That's the whole thing, right here. And
but Tom,
all you have to do to not have neon is enforce the current code.
I want to be real careful that we not move out of recusal at the moment.
The language that's being discussed has no effect whatsoever on this applicant.
the sign's
I'm happy
not
to
the
add
issue.
it if I'm directed by three of the board members.
There are two issues we're talking about. One is the ordinance that is countywide and discusses what kind of signage you can have and the limits thereto. The other is the appeal that's before us, which revolves around the three issues previously discussed. At this point, I would ask to poll the board on the question of the addition of the language that I had proposed. That means something to my vote, and I'd be interested to see whether there's a majority on that.
I would like to see it added.
No.
I have to agree with Marita. I think that this issue before us today is an appeal of the Public Works decision to deny an application for an encroachment permit in the county right-of-way. And I believe it was heard on the merits of the appeal. And I'm just concerned, Steve, about getting too much redundancy in our actions. I don't know what a board 10 years from now, 20 years from now is going to do, and I don't think anybody here does. But hopefully they will hear and judge any appeal or any other matter that comes before the board at that time in a manner that will base it upon the merits of the issue. And it's not that I necessarily disagree with what you're trying to accomplish here, but I'm afraid that we're going to complicate this decision. And I like to keep things simple in that each issue should be decided on its own merit. And we have decided the merit of this based on these findings as is in our code. And,
okay.
And I think any future boards will do the same for any similar issue that comes before the board.
All right, it would appear that the county council will not have a writing project in front of them. Any comment from our administrator?
Yeah, just one point I wanted to offer as you consider this is that at a minimum, a board member's vote in support of this is expression enough of a finding, that it's not necessary for the board to draft finding language that a yes or a no indicates the board members finding that these conditions have been met. So it's not necessary to reach that.
Yes, I understand the requirements. I was looking for things beyond that measure and have failed at it. So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion for the applicant to accept the applicant's appeal or approve the applicant's appeal of Public Works decision to deny the application for an encroachment permit in the county right-of-way.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Again, could I ask if that's subject to the typical conditions that would be applied by Public Works to any other?
That's can include that language in that motion. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. The second also applies to that.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes on a 3-1 with one recusal.
Okay.
We'll take a 5-minute break and move to item number 8 momentarily. Back in session. We now call your attention to item number 8. It is a discussion and possible action regarding a request for waiver of Department of Agriculture fees in the amount of $542.50 on a land conservation contract 302. Mr. Bowman.
Good morning. Brian Moss, Administrator of Environmental Management. I am here in place of Mary Mutz, our Ag Commissioner, today. She's not in this week. This is something that was addressed by the board on October 7th. The Board of Supervisors approved California Land Conservation Contract number 302 for Bowman. At that meeting, a request was made by the Ag Commissioner pursuant to the applicant asking for the fees of $542.50 processing fees be waived. Essentially, the background here is in 2007, the Bowmans applied for 2 California land conservation contracts in the amount of $1,085 since they were 2. Both these contracts were denied at the time of application because they didn't meet the requirements set forth. At this time, we looked at what is the cost of actually processing the permits, especially since the Bowmans requested the waiver of the $542.50. What we did is staff returned to the offices and did a fiscal analysis. The bottom line is a review of costs incurred in 2007 for the 2 contracts amounted to $3,000, in excess of $3,000. And then, of course, the current application that was actually approved for the contract number 302 exceeded $1,000. So with that said, staff cannot support waiver of the fees because we've already incurred the costs. And if should the board choose to waive those fees, that will be an impact of $542.50 to the general fund that would otherwise have been collected.
Okay. Any board questions? Do I hear a motion?
Is Mr. Bowman here?
No, he's not.
I'll move the denial of the request for refund.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That passes on a 4-1.
Thank you.
All right, the denial motion passes on a 4-1. We now move to item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding Board of Supervisors' response to the 2007-2008 final grand jury report. Administration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The county has prepared the county administrator's office has prepared a draft response for the Board of Supervisors to the contents of the grand jury report in those areas for which a response was requested from the Board of Supervisors. In preparing this draft, the county administrator's office relied primarily upon responses by the departments themselves to the grand jury report, including Human Resources and the Community Development Department. And also those areas where the county administrator was asked for comment on the grand jury report and there was no underlying departmental response, or where the county administrator's office concurred perhaps only in part with a departmental response. Those replies were then compiled and offered to the board as the substance of the board's response to the grand jury report.
And you've reviewed them and concur?
I have reviewed the departmental responses. In some cases, there were responses to the same items in the grand jury report by different departments where the departments themselves did not concur. And in those areas where there was a difference, I did express my concurrence with one or the other. I would add and stress that the county administrator's office played no role in departmental preparation of their responses. They were not vetted by the county administrator's office. I exercised no subject, editorial, or substantive control over what the departments prepared and offered to the presiding judge for transmission to the grand jury. They are the department's own documents.
Okay.
Okay, is there any discussion? Actually, is there any comment from the public on this topic?
Morning, Joyce Teckel. I'm here today as a co-chair of CAP, Community Action Project. I'm going to be presenting a letter for the group. It is signed by myself as co-chair. John Trinkle is represented here as co-chair. Jackie Neal is a board member. Holly Mines is a board member. Steve Shimp is a board member. Penny Sarvis is a board member. And Mickey Williamson is a CAP coordinator. The following concerned citizens have requested to be associated with this letter: Catherine Jackson, Muriel Zeller, Ward LaValle, Pat Bailey, and Rhoda Nussbaum. I have copies for the board and for county council and the CAO.
Thank you.
In response to the grand jury report findings released last June regarding the Community Development Agency and its then director, Stephanie Moreno, we finally have the Board of Supervisors, the Chief Administrative Officer, and the CDA on the record. Interestingly, the Board of Supervisors, the CAO, and the CDA reject most of the findings except precious few and substantively ignore others by saying there has been a change in the leadership at the CDA. Ms. Moreno apparently resigned as a result of the grand jury investigation, which is now being refuted by the county almost in its entirety. We are being urged by Supervisors Tryon and Callaway, in particular, to believe that this whole mess is over and that it is time to move on. As citizens, we are left wondering what is over, why it is over, and how to move on. Certainly, the repercussions of this particular grand jury process cannot and should not be ignored. We must not forget the letter Supervisor Tryon addressed to the grand jury that was most likely the impetus for their investigation of the CDA and its director. It seems almost inconceivable that Supervisor Tryon would want us to forget this letter, as he made it public at a Board of Supervisors meeting on July 8, 2007. Does he now disavow the allegations he made in that letter? If so, we need to hear that before we can move on. Supervisor Tryon questioned Supervisor Thomas's religious tolerance and implied, quote, rampant speculation close quote, about an intimate relationship between Supervisor Claudino and CDA Director Moreno had a basis in fact. He alleged the intolerance and the improper relationship impacted county governance. He alleged collusion and Brown Act violations on the part of Supervisor Walensky, Claudino, and Thomas in the resignations of CAO Tom Mitchell and Public Works Director Rob Houghton. In Mitchell's case, to force a resignation, and in Houghton's case, to delay it. He railed against unprofessional relationships and the chain of command run amok. He alleged Supervisor Walensky was leaking information during sensitive labor negotiations and using prior relationships to influence those negotiations. If Supervisor Tryon disavows these allegations, and we need to hear that before we can move on, and we need to hear why he now disavows those allegations. The grand jury ignored the bulk of Supervisor Tryon's accusations, but if we believe he was sincere, we are now puzzled that he could let such serious violations of law and ethics simply dissolve. He requested the grand jury report be released prior to the June primary election. This could be seen as an effort to allow the good people of Calaveras County to make an informed choice at the polls, or it could be seen as an attempt to exert undue influence on the jury and politicize the grand jury process. If so, we would be led to question whether the grand jury was used to target and remove a county department head, Ms. Moreno, based on at least partially false information. If Supervisor Tryon's allegations have credibility, why didn't the grand jury investigate all of them or forward them to the appropriate authority for investigation? If Supervisor Tryon's allegations have credibility, why is he now asking us to move on without a full accounting? We are confused. At what point do we take our supervisors seriously? Serious allegations cannot be made and then ignored, seemingly when a political objective has been achieved. It doesn't look good. And as the supervisors themselves are fond of saying, perception matters. We want the public hearing on the grand jury report the Board of Supervisors promised us, because the current perception is there is something to hide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other comments?
Carlos Stoughton. I'd just like to say that this is a political hatchet job. Holly Mines and her supporters, they support Lee Seaton, and they're coming out against Tom Tryon. If you look at it, I don't know why you chose to have the grand jury report and the Dorian Fott matter seen 1 week before the election. It just boggles the mind that anybody would be so base and to use the supervisor's chamber for such purposes. And I think Steve Walensky is to blame for this.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for speaking out of turn, but I have an important point to make about the scheduling of the items.
All right. Well, I would be most grateful for that, because
this is the first meeting that this board has had during the month of October when all 5 board members were present. And in fact, we had at least one meeting when only 3 members were present. Both the grand jury report and the sign issue, in the opinion of the administrative office, were significant enough and had an interest and had an interest in the community and the board that I believed it was necessary for all 5 members to be present at the time these issues were considered, and that's the reason for this scheduling. No other entities were involved in determining the scheduling, and it was a judgment made by the county administrator's office without consultation with other parties.
Carl Stoughton, I thank you for clearing that up, but I still think Steve Walensky did have something to do with this.
Thank you for your input. Does anybody else like to speak on this?
Good morning. My name is Holly Mines, and I don't
think that it's really necessary for me to respond to what Carlos has said. I didn't really realize that I had that much power, either within the government circles or within the organizations that I belong to. I will remind you that I am no longer on the Planning Commission, so I'm not in any way affiliated with county government, and I don't think I've even spoken to Steve Walensky about the grand jury report. I just felt that I would like to read a statement from the newspaper of last Friday, which was questions and answers asked of all the candidates that are currently running, because I personally find that it's applicable to this topic. And this is Tom Tryon's response to what changes do the people of Calaveras County want in the way their government operates, and how will you make those changes happen? Tom Tryon says, the people of Calaveras County want open, honest, transparent, and competent government. I have strongly advocated for this type of county government, and it remains my top priority. I believe our community would like the county to establish policies that are in the public interest and equally applicable to all. And I agree with him. I think the community would like the county to establish policies that are in the public interest and equally applicable to all. And I keep feeling like if the government, which is headed by the Board of Supervisors, would more clearly and transparently establish policies and procedures which they would follow, we would not be getting into the kinds of discussions that we get into over the grand jury reports, over issues like cumulative impacts that I continually bring up, over issues like the housing element, which is due in 6 months, and we're still in a position of having not addressed it at all, and it's a requirement of state law. We do need clear policies and procedures, and we do need open, transparent, and competent government. And I'm asking myself, if Mr. Tryon has been in office for 24 years, why are we not there yet? Thank you very much.
Carlos Stoughton, I'd like to remind the public that Holly Mines drives around with a large Lee Seaton for supervisor sign on her car. She lives outside the district and continues to support a supervisor that is not in her district. And I do believe that...
Is this on the topic before us, which is the review of the grand jury report? I really think we're ranging off agenda item, and
I agree, Steve.
That's one. Well, miracles can happen. Is there any other person who wishes to address the board on this topic before we take it to board deliberation? All right. Any questions from the board or comments?
I will make a comment in relation to the Community Action Project letter, of whom there are just about everybody on there I philosophically support. In this case, I do not. Mr. Tryon and I are the ones who signed the complaint to the grand jury. Mr. Tryon and I agreed to abide by what the grand jury reported. The grand jury made a report. It was a public report. It was reviewed in this forum, and that was the end of conversation. There was no more discussion by Mr. Tryon, no more discussion by myself. So there, as far as I'm concerned, I can't speak for Mr. Tryon, but what was said in public is that was it. There's a difference between an investigative complaint and a report, and the issue's gone. There is nothing more to stir up. There is nothing more to discuss with the public. If the new seating grand jury wants to do something, that is their charge. But as far as the issues that were in the complaint, we agreed to abide by the grand jury report. There is nothing hidden, and there, as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing more to discuss. It was a tumultuous time for the board, both before the report and after the report. And as far as I'm concerned, it's over and it's time to go on.
Other board comments?
I will move this item if there's no other comments from my colleagues.
I just
Supervisor Thomas
wanted to respond to Mr. Teckel's assertion that if we're not going to address these things, and that must logically mean that there's something to hide. In my mind, there never has been anything to hide. There never was. There is not currently anything to hide. The allegations that were made about me are the possibility certainly exists that there was nothing in them in the beginning, so that it explains everything that needs to be explained about that. There was no foundation for it. So that's my activities and my methodology and my way I conduct myself here and in the community is an open book, and I want everybody to know that. So to answer your question specifically, is there anything to hide? Not from my point of view. So, okay.
I have a comment or two I'd like to make. Interesting thing about our democracy is, and I've been watching the national elections and watching people on a daily basis make up what they think are the facts and put them on television and broadcast them 1,000 times over. We've been bombarded as a people with innuendo, rumor, and things that just had no basis. Interestingly, in our democratic process locally, we have 5 districts. And if you really visit each of those districts, you'll find that they actually have very different characters, different sensibilities, different histories, different demographics. And not surprisingly, they've elected 5 dramatically different people to represent them. Not necessarily a bad thing if it actually puts the whole together on a single board of 5 people. You have 3 political parties represented here. You have very different histories and personal philosophies, backgrounds, and experiences of which we draw on to make decisions. And yes, there are times, as it was discussed in another part of today's meeting, that we don't get along all that well. And there are also remarkably uplifting moments where we overcome that and actually deal with the people's business, which in fact is what we were sent here to accomplish. Very disappointingly, this last year has had way too much time spent on things that went outside of normal due process. The complaint that was lodged refers to things that were heard or suspected or guilt by association, things that you take, for instance, let's say my background is a union organizer, a person who devoted his entire previous 30 years to advancing the concerns of working people. Does that mean, without evidence, without any indication that conversations occurred, that I've violated my obligations as a newly elected supervisor? No, it shouldn't. And I know exactly what I was elected to do, and I have stayed strictly and carefully within those boundaries. And yet I've spent a good period of time with repeated suspicions and allegations about that. I know that every single person here came with a set of background and experiences. Supervisor Tryon brings a background in ag and helped inform him on questions of ag zoning, which we both agreed on and moved a good agenda forward together. I don't believe that he had some kind of sinister motive to advance the interest of ag. I think that his background made him an informed person on it. For me, it's a sad moment when our backgrounds become the source of suspicion. It's true, our differences can lead us to that. And we can polarize ourselves politically. With 3 political parties, there's sure a lot of ground to accomplish that. But again, I don't think the American people or the people of Calaveras County wish that upon us. They may have sent us here, but it wasn't for the purpose of disagreement or personal animus. And I think that when we cross a line where we don't stay within our normal board processes, if we do not establish those, and if we're not able to resolve our differences within that there are going to be moments where people will make assumptions of bad faith without the evidence required to back it up and do a tremendous amount of damage, not just to the personal relationships, but to the institution itself. Now, I know that leaders have to set a tone, and that it is important that we call on our better instincts and not try to polarize or to create divisions within our communities. It's a real fine line, how to be principled and yet have our disagreements in a way that we don't become so disagreeable that we can't function as a board, or that we inspire passions in the electorate that create an ungovernability. We have heard some very harsh words. And personally, as I read this letter again, it brings up some things that I feel necessary to respond to. Yes, I've tried, since the moment I got here, to get a Board of Supervisors office, because I believe that our function is hurt by that, by the lack of that. We have no administrative support staff, no place to put our files except home, and some of our spouses or partners are dissatisfied with 4 years of paper, by the way, which I measure now to be, if you put it all together, in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 feet high. Where do you put that stuff? Well, you know, you can throw it out, or you can establish an office. In 2 years of failing to do that here within it, I did take an initiative to put an office. There was an opening over at Motherlode Job Training. But the idea of inviting people to join in that being a de facto violation of the Brown Act, we're in the same place quite often. For instance, every noon, or most noons, 3, 4, 5 of us will actually go have lunch together. That's not a Brown Act violation. The Brown Act violation is if we were to talk about something that would have to do with decisions or policies or things outside of our normal, the weather, kids, how is the sports team doing, kind of lunch conversation. That's a Brown Act violation when we do this. Now, interestingly enough, in this particular office, there were never 3 of us in that building at any time in the entire history of doing that office. At one time, actually at 2 times, there were 2 of us there. And those conversations that occurred during those 2 times involved the rent, the phone installation, and the location of files and office equipment. It is true that other supervisors not participating in it thought that this was a really bad idea. And in the end, there were never 3 people participating. There were never 3 people in the room. And again, only twice were there 2 people in that building at the same time. How this became a subject of the grand jury review is, I think, simply a failure of people to come directly and ask the question. Let's go into another matter. We've heard a lot about hostile work environment, and it's really a legal term of art. There is a legal term of art. Hostile work environment involves the elements of discrimination against protected classes of people. And one of the most taught, and when we are in these sessions where we're taught how to avoid such situations, one of the things that we're told not to do is to pass rumors about people's personal life, especially false rumors about people's personal lives, in a way that do them harm or that may damage, based on gender, people standing in a particular work situation. The idea that without any evidence or any substantiation, that we could have trashed people out to that extent, including my fellow board member, is so appalling and so damaging to this institution that it's almost impossible to recover from. My best hope is that we can find a way to come back to our senses, that this is in fact an ending point to something that really harmed us all and didn't really progress this county on the people's issues very far. And yet it has become the subject of a great deal of political discussion and polarization. The idea of bringing somebody's religion, especially when they don't even go to church, into a discussion about the formulation of public policy requires some evidence. It would be a hellacious thing if we were using our religious backgrounds, which, by the way, I suspect we have at least 3 or 4 and possibly 5 different spiritual philosophies on this board and backgrounds and heritages. But if any of us brought that to the attention or brought that into a decision about personnel, we would be violating a law. And it is a subject that the grand jury ought to take a look at. But to begin the process without any evidence or even making up things that you may have heard, where's the prayer sessions? Where's the people who are supervisors who are involved in it? And if those are going on, did that actually have any effect on a decision about a personnel transaction? Are these things that we should be going into, the depth of those and the seriousness of those allegations? Should we go there with absolutely erroneous rumor? Or is the threshold something that is more important to reach before going there? I hope that this board won't venture this direction again. I believe if somebody wants to know something from me, any board member of any philosophy, that they should ask. And if they're not satisfied with that, and if they have evidence that that is not correct, I would hope they would pursue it. Somehow, we must return from this hellacious year to the point where we can again do the people's business without the suspicion that some of you have expressed even today, that we're incapable of moving beyond our narrow political or philosophical perspectives to actually make a board that is functional for the people's wishes. That's the challenge before us, and that's the challenge that my hope is will not be dealt with by grand juries, or not need to be dealt with by grand juries, but will be dealt with between the people who are sent forward here, for better or worse, by the electorate. People have choices, and this is one of the most tumultuous elections that I have seen nationally. One of the most significant moments for this county in its direction and what direction it will take locally. And these are the most challenging times that we have faced economically since the 1930s. If we can't rise above what this history of the last year has brought us to, then we will have failed the people in a most significant and egregious way. Somehow, all of us, and I include myself, have to overcome the hurts of this last year and move on, as has been suggested by 2 supervisors. I add my name to that. This is behind us. I will support, despite some minor differences with this document, I will support its adoption as a response, and I will try the best I know how to move on to a new day. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote. Tomorrow's a new day. We now have boards and commission, board reports, correspondence, and schedule.
I'd like to start by singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
And he's the guy who could do it, actually.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, well, don't sing over the
Don't
rainbow,
sing,
but
all right.
If you have a schedule to relate.
There's a jail meeting at the boat barn that I'll be attending on Thursday morning at 10. There's a meeting about the red-legged frog at CalWorks at 2 o'clock also on Thursday. And I'll be attending the Copper Fire District Board of Directors meeting on Thursday evening. And that concludes my report for this week.
Supervisor Callaway.
Bill's Chili won first place in the chili cook-off on
kidding.
Saturday.
Give the board proud.
Yeah, since you guys chickened out on us.
Well, you were an intimidating competition.
It was very good. It was very good. On Saturday, it was really an interesting day in San Andreas. They had the car show and the chili cook-off. They had the plant sale, the master gardeners, and that was open. And they also had an adopt a pet. And I went up to the shelter, of course.
Did you get adopted?
Yeah, I did. And they were getting ready to close up, and a woman came with 3 puppies to drop off at the shelter. And we're having more and more of that, and not just dogs and cats, but livestock have become an issue. And I'm not sure how we're going to address that, but I think hopefully the Humane Society, the cattlemen's, and a saddle something or other. I want to call them a saddle queen, but that's not. There's a saddle club. Saddle club can maybe come together to find a mechanism to provide feed for the livestock.
What do we have?
Well, let me give it. I'll give an example of what happened that was brought to me last week. Some people in Copper rescued 2 quarter horses who were starving. They brought them to their ranch or farm or 5 acres or whatever. They fed them, they brought them back to health, but they can't afford to keep feeding them. The shelter does not take abandoned livestock unless they're sort of going to rescue. If you want to drop off your horse, you can't drop off your horse. So maybe this is just an outcome along with, as all of you saw the picture of Billy Westernoff in the food bank, the shelves are empty. So what can we do in these different venues and the different groups to bring about some help for the community, hopefully, that cares? I just throw that out because it was, I almost took 3 puppies home to foster. Anyway.
You should have taken 2 horses.
I should have brought 2 horses. I'd rather have brought 2 goats to eat my star thistle try on. But. Okay, I have a Treasury Oversight meeting this week, the jail meeting that Russ mentioned, the meeting with Fish and Game on Thursday afternoon. I will be in Sacramento Friday for the state water plan. And just a reminder that the quilt fair is this weekend, and there are people from all over Calaveras that participate in that. And the Environmental Film Festivals start Saturday night, and it'll be different this year. Instead of it being 2 days all in one location, it'll be, I believe, 4 days over the next 5 or 6 months at different locations.
Biodegradable film?
Yeah, how'd you know that, Claudina? You're going to show one of your movies?
I'll be there with a chili.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Claudino.
Thanks. Last Friday, the 24th, I attended the Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency meeting at which in Colderville, by the way, at the Hotel Jeffrey, which is not on the way to anywhere, but it's a nice place to visit and have lunch if you ever have a little free time and have excellent driving skills. And at that agency,
You do?
yes, actually the best. And at that meeting, that committee, that agency dispersed some funds that they have by virtue of their grants. And so just, we all, like with many things, there were requests for more funds than were available. And so just quickly, I want to tell you what that Community Action Agency does their part for. We had the Calaveras Motherload Job Training was awarded $55,000 for their programs. The Calaveras Drail, which assists people with disabilities to access their homes by various construction, all the way from building ramps to putting in handrails and that sort of thing. They applied for $5,000, and it's exactly what we gave them. They're a very large organization. They had not applied in Calaveras before, so that's an inroad for them. The Human Resources Council, as Maria said, their food bank is empty, and this is to help them. They had asked for $70,000, which we awarded them. The Calaveras Child Dental Program, which is extremely important. In this county, they go into schools and identify children that have not the bare essential dental care that will allow them to have dental health as they grow and mature throughout their lives. So it's the starting point from which there's no going back, and that program was awarded $9,500. And the other Calaveras agency was the Valley Springs Youth, which is located in Valley Springs on the campus of the Valley Springs Elementary School, and they were awarded $7,500 for their after-school and mentoring program. That is, let's see, for this for this week. I intend to be at the Red-Legged Frog meeting on Thursday. Russ, did you say that's at 2 p.m.?
That's what I have, yeah, at CalWorks.
And it's at CalWorks?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, for those folks that are eligible and feel like it, that's the day for San Andreas to have their flu shots. So put that on your calendar if that's something you want. Friday for Marita, I'm going to go apparently to the child support meeting at CalWorks at 2 p.m. also. That should be interesting. Yeah. That's also the same time as the Red-Legged Frog meeting.
No, it's Friday. Red Lake, it's on Thursday.
Different date. Not paying attention. Sorry.
But you could just stay there.
You know, I'm thinking about it. That's all.
Supervisor Tryon.
I do not have anything to bring before the board today, Mr. Chair.
I've got the following meetings. There's a showing tonight with the put on by First Five, the Child Care Council, and our OCOC. Where Do the Children Play is the show. There will be dinner at 6, and after that they will play that very interesting documentary. We'll let's see.
That's at Bret Hart?
Yes. And we have two tax meetings similar to the meetings that were conducted in Supervisor Thomas's district on tax evaluations, baseline tax and appeal processes for determining your property tax. These are community meetings on Wednesday at West Point, 7:30 at the Veterans Hall, and Thursday in Mountain Ranch from 7 to 8:30 at the Community Club. I will try to get to the Red-Legged Frog meeting sandwiched between other meetings. I'll be at the JPA Family Central Sierra Child Support meeting at 2 o'clock on Friday. And I'd like to report just quickly on last week, as some of you know, I was at the National Forest Foundation conference in Montana, where a number of projects that were associated with the National Forest System were discussed, and people representing the different organizations in this county. The CHIPS project has been doing some stewardship work and fire safe clearance. The discussion was primarily around how to rekindle economies that were lost when mills shut down and when a substantial number of people were employed in the timber industry, and what you do after that to maintain both the health of the forests, a healthy economy, and fire-safe communities. There were a number of great projects and information that there were going to be a number of forest stewardship projects that have been discussed both at the Sierra Conservancy meeting that I've been attending and now at the National Forest Foundation. To make a long story short, we're going to have a visit from the head of the Sierra Conservancy, Jim Branham, as well as the head of the National Forest Partnership Department to come to Calaveras County and see whether we might develop an extensive forest stewardship program for the Stanislaus National Forest, which could put a lot of people back to work if we were selected as a primary site. So I will be talking to the Chamber of Commerce, a number of forest dependent companies, and will invite others both from the board and administration to greet them properly and see if we can put our best foot forward to try to win some substantial contracts for reemployment of people who are not working either living wage jobs or even full-time in the forest. We have a whole generation of kids with looking for work with no real good local sustainable jobs, and the hope would be we could create some out of this. Long shot, but worth a try. I have nothing further. I know that our CAO has at least one announcement regarding board schedule.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and a couple of other items too. First, with the board schedule, this is a reminder to our viewers, our listeners, our staff, and board members that there will be no board meeting on November 11th, Tuesday, November 11th. That's Veterans Day, and it's a county holiday. So please mark the calendars accordingly.
Is Monday a work day?
In my office, it is, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll be down to check on you.
Please do, anytime. Anytime. I'll be meeting tomorrow with John Brophy from Calaveras County Schools to discuss the Safe Rural Schools allocation. As you know, Congress has acted to restore those funds again, and it would be absent direction to the contrary from the board. It would be my intention to enter into the same distribution of funds for SRS as we have had in previous years with the schools, and distribution also to our roads program. And that's coming up tomorrow, and I'll advise the board at the November 4th meeting about the outcome of that. Finally, I will be tomorrow, and this is just in the shameless self-promotion department, I will be speaking tomorrow at the luncheon of the Calaveras County Taxpayers Association discussing state budget impacts on Calaveras County. So, and that'll be at camps at Greenhorn Creek, noontime tomorrow.
Supervisor Tryon has an addition.
A question on the budget, since you brought it up. I read something from somebody here in the last day or two amid much excitement that the PILT was not only approved, but it was increased. Are we going to be anticipating some unanticipated revenue as a consequence of that action?
There may be some, but of course it will be split with school districts, and I'll be back with you on the 4th to let you know what the numbers are.
Just since we're speaking in acronyms and not everybody listening might know.
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
From the federal government.
That's different from secure rural schools.
Correct. There's two different.
That's what it was. I was reading about. It was in the bailout.
But it was part of.
I think we're getting bailout money, Bob.
I'm ready to pull the ripcord if you are.
Part of the bailout legislation included PILT, but it included an increased funding over time for PILT also. So, which was a big surprise to everyone.
So with that, I'll just ask County Council if he thinks he can top that.
I think so. Last week, Acting Board Chair Thomas gave me a letter from an organization called Stewards of the Range. They're a Texas outfit, and they're run apparently by a retired U.S. attorney, and asked me to investigate, to look into it. And so I'd like to give you just a brief interim report. I don't have all the answers yet, but stewards of the range, the premise is based on the fact, apparently, that most of the federal legislation that governs land use, the Endangered Species Act, Federal Land Management Act, requires in some form or another that the federal bureaucracies coordinate with local government and respect, and give some degree of respect at least to local government's general plan. And I think Stewards of the Range is designed to help local governments exact the most possible impact from that requirement. I have no idea yet what that really equates to. I know that it doesn't give local government a veto power over what the federal government's doing, but it may give us a better place at the table. So I've been in touch with several of the other counties, worked with the CAL on it, and we'll continue to put together a package, possibly a recommendation. What some counties have done have adopted a resolution. Tuolumne County adopted a resolution. At this point, I'm not sure that this really adds much, but again, I'll get back to you with a more definitive answer when I have some more information.
We are a home rule county. We passed that.
Yeah, that was the other question
vote
that came up with.
But we did pass, we are a home rule county.
Yeah, I think that, I'm not sure that home rule doesn't give us all of the rights that we have anyway. But.
Well, part of it is building your relationships. And I have to say, in this county, the U.S. Forest Service has been very willing to work with Calaveras County on issues regarding items, whether it's the permittees, whether it's fire, whether it's closing roads. They've been really willing to work with us. I can't address the others because most of my experience with the Forest Service has been very positive. So we just, it's like that Tuolumne did. That's just pounding our chests saying, we're a home rule county. I mean,
Thank God for that, Marita. What we rule is another question.
I
know.
On this interaction specifically with the federal government, did you all see the letter from Peggy Brooks from the Bureau of Reclamation addressing our letter to them about the development on the west side of Maloney? So we need to follow up on that, set up a meeting. So could the CAO be directed to do that?
We'll take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, this leaves possible comment from the clerk's office. Nothing, huh? One of these days we'll coax it out of you. Must be up to something. This concludes the morning part of our board meeting. We have 2 study sessions this afternoon, which I encourage both members of the public and press to attend. The first has to do with the situation with abandoned mines, and there will be a presentation which will include the possibility of this county accessing funds that had previously not been available to us in the brownfields arena. And secondly, we'll be discussing special districts and our administrative costs relating to supporting them, both of which are, I'm sure, matters that the public will have, either should have or do have a keen interest in. So we'll see you at 2.